ranging from one, ranging from 197 all the way to 190. Okay, that's technically four episodes. Ranging from 197 to 196 to 195 to 194. So I've missed all episodes in terms of review quality, but I will give you a very special review as an overview because I have seen the episodes. Wide majority, I'll give it on 8 out of 10 to 7 out of 10, and I'll just give you a wide majority, and I'll just give you a wide synopsis review on what's happening. So each and every one of these episodes leads up to 197, which is said to be a manga-related episode, especially with the fight with Delta, which there's a lot of hype building around that. As for 194 to 196, even though it also added into what happens later on in 197, shows the life Clocky is not having with the Uzumaki household. So how much of a badass he is in this, and at the same time, it also shows his time living with the Uzumaki household, and and their hopes and dreams to be bonds run him, and even though Boruto dislikes him, there's a bit of Naruto and Sasuke in there, and also with Akashi. The memes have been around, and in terms of where would Boruto and Akashi be in the future, will it be a hero and villain thing, or is it just in the way of terms of an anti-hero versus anti-hero, which is more of my thing instead of the version of a hero versus villain, rather than just two people with two separate ideologies, which are both good and they're fighting for different objectives for one of the end of Shinobi, while the other one chooses to remain one. Even though the way Aston Boruto is to be as a Shinobi will be very resonant to something like Sasuke, Kakashi, or Minato, and it's like those three names, I think you'll probably get that it will be very dark one for Boruto. Especially that's the feature that Momoshiki prophesied all the way to Trinity, who prophesied will fight to the bitter end. In terms of how dark the series, along with Quacky's backstory and all that he's gone through from the manga to the anime, done even though it was rated from 183 to 184, especially with showing how Quacky relates or tries to live his uh, weird life of a tortured slave while being in a area that is not used to, which is the village. If we're talking about the world Naruto is trying to build and experiencing it firsthand, regardless of the peaceful and loving, caring and understanding environment Crockett is surrounded by, he still doesn't trust and so doesn't buy it. Regardless of the small imperfections on pinpointing to trust Naruto. The other things to notice is that, and I would go off of that and start our rant on how much this will impact Clark in the future and how much this will Naruto. So I'm not gonna go on that too much, but I will touch on that lightly and try to expand it more. So what happened is made the relationship between Clarky and Naruto expanding pretty much because of Clarky would have been Naruto if Naruto never had anyone that would ever help you. And also in terms of the pain of being lonely in comparison to Clarky's pain of being abused all day, I'm pretty sure it's more self-explanatory. Even though you can vouch for Jiraiya or Neji or other story that around him would try to add something, but it didn't seem like so it would physically hurt him because he didn't to protect everyone else. If you see my Renegade Naruto exploration of what if Naruto was in an alternate reality, having been reincarnated and also been in the Akatsuki, it would more show that the pain actually more so affects him on the way that it was more of despair, rather than being an encouraging factor. So what does this have to do with anything involving Crocky? The reason Naruto is on top of the world and around this time instead of where he's later in 1037 to 36, where I normally bash the Kage for being so confident as they get to Code or Ada, when Naruto and Sasuke can't really handle someone who's stronger than someone who ripped them to pieces, and I'm pretty sure you know who. Jigen, my boy. Now in terms of power and where Naruto is at this point, it's well earned for him to tell the Kage, which did happen around in 193, around the episode in which he said, I will take care of Crocky and everything else that will happen. Which, if you know everything else that happened later on, in from 36 to 37, all the way to chat, even to 48, and probably to Naruto and Sasuke, you know that Naruto will be taking a lot of bash from the Kage that has coming up, that has come across from chapter 57, and then also with the question of Gara, which is a brief spoiler because I haven't really tried to get into them. I haven't have a video out for it yet, but I have something coming. But a brief spoiler is that Gara asks Naruto, "Are you willing to kill your son for the sake of the leaf?" Which is something similar to what Madara said. Well, first Hashira said to Madara, then Madara implicated onto Sasuke. In other words, I went to kill and sacrifice to keep a whole bunch of it. The thing is, Naruto doesn't, and it makes so many controversial hypocritical claims for it. Just because people would understand, people doesn't understand, mainly because even though he preaches to Crocky with tells a lot of how ninja attack is to connect all, don't forget that the Uchiha are masters of that type of chakra, but not to the emotional form of what Hagon was intended for. Even though he was the maker of chakra for humans on Earth, he never really understood the Uchiha way, which was the way of power. There is a probability of some other Uchiha understanding the need for both power and love, to care for one another, or the love for care for yourself, or just the love of using that power, which is what most people are rating up to probably the team even all the way down to Jigen. So of course, definitely believing that, but of course, we need power to protect others, which has been shown throughout the Naruto series, in which Naruto has to protect his friends by getting stronger along with mastering Kurama, which he now has. Now, why won't he acknowledge that or even mention that to make him a bit more of an honest character, even though this is just something that has been stated throughout from 194 to 195, in which Naruto believes, in which Naruto, even though being a self-hearted character and down to earth in a way, is more or less ignoring a lot of things that he would consider. Yes, we can say it has a lot of things with him trying to build his own peaceful empire, rather than just having an empire that has been conquered over, which is something Crocky was trained up to build, to be a vessel for a world conquering being, very similar to what's happening with Invincible, and is very similar to how Superman or Blackburn were intended to be pretty much world conquering beings. Superman never came to he became a Naruto, and Invincible and Blackburn became Suzuki, if in the story terminology. So into where it's happening. I like the banter between Sarah and Coffee. Do I believe there was in between them? I don't mind I mean, I like the dynamics they have between the two, but the problem is I don't think, like, Siren for me is being a bit too annoying to ever understand someone like Clock. The reason why is because of what I said. Team 7, except Mitsuki and probably Iwabe, are part of this era in which they are supposed to understand everyone. They're in a peaceful environment, but they're not necessarily acquainted with someone like Clock, who's been tortured half of his life. And Mitsuki was brought up by a badass murderer, Orochimaru pedophile, the best Orochimaru. And Iwabe was born and was brought up in that time in which was better at ninjutsu. So practically he was pretty much cut out to be an Anbu, and soon he understands the world that she's in, to the point that even though she may look like she is soft, she's definitely not, especially with the beating she gave Crocky. So it makes sense for why her would act that way, but so I gotta say, she's a bit overbearing in that sense. Well, she is the board, so she chose him a lot for him having these brotherly feelings toward Crocky. And yes, Crocky is still there to build up the base. And yes, it's in the manga to the point that to the point that was one of my guys' reviews that explained is the fact of the role that he broke was himself rebuilding his humanity, but it also it's a way of him just rebuilding himself, even though it just into humanity, identity, or anything around life. And I believe also in the manga, which also pointed out that the ball had one piece missing, and that piece missing was Jigen. In other words, in terms of what will happen to Kwaku in the future and how he will get the karma, there is a possibility of him turning to Jigenkai. He has no identity, or there's a possibility because in regards of Naruto's peaceful empire, he doesn't want it at all because it's nowhere close to peace. That's just to expose lots of times and got beaten down to the point that he was like, okay, I will just be on their side, just, 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 to see it fall down one day. Now, later on, when it comes to the match between Boruto and Kage, it expands to the point that these two fight, and it's pretty dope seeing them fight in the stick-figure animation style. If not, just go check out Combat Guys. I'm telling you, the combat Boruto and Kage's first press with a beautiful tie jutsu is impressive. Of course, of course, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the training he undergo with Sasuke, it was before the Mojino Bath arc. Probably probably mistaken. No, it was after, and that was how they were working. It had multiple other changes in type of nature. Well, he was perfected regardless of him having no power boost, which he later on had when he took on Naruto. And I obviously feel as though Naruto is yes, he's trying to teach his son how to use his abilities in a tactical manner and not just use power to attack himself. The problem is just one punch from Jigen and his game over. I'm pretty sure Naruto really doesn't understand the concept of power or his own power. Yes, he says don't rely on your power, but the problem is Jigen just touched Naruto and it was game over. Yeah, I know he punched Naruto and then Kurama gave up, but I'm pretty sure, regardless of the lessons being kind of brought down, I'm still telling you, it's pretty much how the term power is taught and how used. Because Quacky, when he just flexed on with Boruto versus Quacky in the comment exchange, and there are a couple of things to know. One, if this was a death battle, it would be a very, very, very close one. In regards of Quacky not having any boost from Jigen, because the karma he had was a lasting karma that would eventually um, that eventually gives us a DNA. Unlike Codes, the Codes is more of a near death state that amps and past you again, but Code doesn't have any Atsuki DNA being give off, but he did have his common amped by a spirit Ishiki. In terms of what happened here in the entire battle, when it came to Boruto and Kaki's fight, straight away Boruto has more skill to the point that he's not really used that much of his power. But then once again, since he has the amp with his speed and ability, the next part is to utilize his his ability. And straight back, of course, Mitsuki realizes that there's a cost to it. And that cost is being put into it. Boruto has more raw power at this point in time that if it's face Boruto, I mean, if Boruto has to face um, again in that episode state, there's a chance that Boruto win because of the mass array of abilities he has. While Taki just has more usage of the common skills to the point that he could practically win just because he has more experience and he has more raw power. The problem is if Boruto and Kwaki were to fight for real and they both had their both hosts, as in Kalki with Ishiki and Boruto with Morishiki is one blown under the water. Yes, you can let Morishiki take over, but at the same time, Ishiki has more wild power than Morishiki, according to the fight he had with Naruto. So I was saying, even though I would ask more clarification, because yes, Morishiki has the power of a nebula, well, of a chocolate absorbing nebula, but also at the same time, Ishiki ended Naruto's something. Yes, if I'm not mistaken, as said per use in the manga, Momoshiki was still controlling the fight, that it was said to be a closer fight in comparison to what the movie showed, because the movie really impacted my this decision making on saying, okay, I don't think Momoshiki is stronger than Hagono, Kaguya, or level even Naruto, because he lost badly. But that's and then the episode kind of just clarified out, because if we have a bit on that, I would with what has been given, regardless of how the anime brought it about, Momoshiki is still way stronger than Naruto Sasuke, and if we could use his power in the way he used it against in chapter 55 and 57, Naruto and Sasuke would have been dead, and that whole thing with him not seeing that Rasengan, regardless of him having a Rasengan, different outcome than what we got in, well, the anime. So rating all of that, it just quickly teaching both of them basics. Their first hand combat is actually balanced. If we're talking about who's faster, with up the karma, Boruto has Boruto. The weird thing is that Boruto has a body flicker, which is more so is yeah, towards speed, but not necessarily rock Lee. And just a quick side note, everyone's kind of nerfed if you think Team 7, because in the manga I remember saw around that time of the Muji Bank arc, which is past, has Rock Lee's Tai Jutsu speed, and it's not really shown a lot in the anime. I think if she uses it against Tifa would have a hard time. Yes, she has shadows. She has to conserve time because of who she's fighting. Especially that does she use it at the right times, or does she's more of a tactical fighter, along with Boruto Mitsuki in their own ways. But at the same time, I still feel as though Team is being nerfed because of what's happening in the anime. But then again, compared to the anime and the manga, and what happened with Naruto versus Delta, and also with a very cool way Koji ran in. So I'm gonna end this real quickly with, well, technically with the Among Us gameplay of Kara and of course those storming into the league. And then when it comes to the Among Us gameplay, if we're talking about the smartest one, yes, I do believe Amado is one of the smartest ones to big rain and to Pokemon into Coach thinks of, oh look, the vessel's off. I wonder if Weekend is, you know, giving up on his vessel, even though Cole's like, yeah, I'm not allowed to leave without Weekend's permission. Of course they both know it's Ishiki, but at the same time, they know exactly what to say. So yes, Amado is the smartest one, but at the same time, there are other smart members such as Code and Jigen. Yes, they mentions at times of who was the mastermind, and once again my boy Ian kind of mentioned that if there was someone else putting in shadows and that was Amado. A bit obvious. I also thought Amado was some was was something, but I wouldn't consider him the big brain behind. Um, okay, the essential leader of Card, and I don't think Amado intensity. As for Code obviously had the more raw power, but limited himself. I'm gonna say a couple things in Tactical involving that and how it could shift the tide. A bit too fast, but yeah. And yeah, and after Delta came in and decided to come in and cause some smoke, okay, what was that? But anyway, it's been your boy Sam, I appreciate it.